The weight of the serving tray pressed into my palms as I navigated between tables at Luciano's, my sensible flats squeaking softly against the polished marble floor. The restaurant hummed with the low murmur of expensive conversations, punctuated by the delicate clink of crystal stemware and silver cutlery against bone china. 8 hours into my shift, and my lower back throbbed with the familiar ache that came from standing too long, smiling too much, and pretending my psychology doctorate meant nothing when men addressed me as sweetheart instead of by name. I adjusted my grip on the tray, balancing 3 plates of osso buco that cost more than my weekly rent. The scent of saffron risotto mingled with truffle oil, expensive perfumes, and the faint metallic tang of my own exhaustion. My feet hurt. My jaw hurt from maintaining the pleasant expression required of service staff in establishments like this. Everything hurt, really. But the tips at Luciano's kept my student loans from defaulting and paid for my brother's medical expenses, so I smiled through it. Table 7 needs water refills. Marco, the floor manager, hissed as he passed me near the kitchen doors. His cologne was too strong, always too strong, like he was trying to mask the smell of his own anxiety. And Mr. Caruso's party just arrived. Private room. Don't keep them waiting. I nodded, delivering the osso buco to a table of investment bankers who didn't look up from their phones as I set down their plates. Invisible. That's what we were supposed to be here. Ghosts who materialized with food and disappeared the moment we were no longer needed. It was a skill I'd perfected over the past 2 years, this art of being present but unseen. Dominic Caruso was a regular, arriving every Tuesday night for the past 6 months with various associates. I'd served his table perhaps a dozen times, enough to recognize his preferences. Bourbon neat, never scotch. Rare steak, always the ribeye. Conversations conducted in low tones that ended abruptly whenever staff approached. He tipped well, spoke politely, and radiated the kind of controlled power that made people instinctively step aside when he moved through a room. I grabbed a pitcher of sparkling water from the service station and headed toward the private dining room tucked away in the back corner of the restaurant. The hallway leading to it was quieter, insulated from the main dining area by heavy velvet curtains and thick walls. My reflection in the gilded mirrors lining the corridor showed a woman in her late 20s with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, minimal makeup, and tired eyes that had seen too many late nights studying behavioral patterns and not enough sleep. The private dining room door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see Dominic seated at the head of an oval table, his broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. 3 men sat with him, their voices a low rumble that I couldn't quite make out. I raised my hand to knock when something stopped me. It was subtle. So subtle that most people would have missed it entirely. But 2 years of intensive training in micro-expressions and behavioral analysis had taught me to notice the infinitesimal shifts in body language that betrayed true intent. The man seated to Dominic's left, a heavy-set figure with slicked-back hair and a diamond pinky ring, had just shifted his weight forward almost imperceptibly. His shoulders tensed, his jaw clenched, his eyes flickered to the man across from him. A signal, quick and loaded with meaning. The man across the table responded with the barest nod. His right hand dropped below the table edge, moving toward his hip with the kind of deliberate slowness that preceded violence. Both men's pupils were dilated despite the bright chandelier overhead. Adrenaline response. Fight-or-flight activation. They were preparing for something. My training kicked in before conscious thought could intervene. I recognized the pre-attack posture, the synchronized movements, the predatory focus that all pointed to one conclusion. These men were about to hurt Dominic Caruso. I didn't think. I reacted. I shoved the door open hard, letting it bang against the wall with a crack that shattered the tense silence. All 4 men turned toward me, their expressions ranging from surprise to fury. I stepped inside, the water pitcher trembling slightly in my hands as my heart hammered against my ribs. "Mr. Caruso," I said, my voice louder and steadier than I felt. "There's an urgent phone call for you at the front desk." They said it's about your mother. A medical emergency. It was a lie. A complete fabrication. But I needed to disrupt whatever was about to happen, to break the momentum of the violence that had been coiling in the room like a spring wound too tight. Dominic's storm-gray eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, everything else fell away. The other men, the elegant room, my racing pulse. There was an intelligence in his gaze that seemed to cut through my flimsy excuse and see directly into my intent. He didn't believe me, but something in my expression must have communicated the urgency, the warning I was trying to convey. "I see," he said slowly, his voice a low rumble that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. He stood with fluid grace, his movements controlled and deliberate. "Gentlemen, excuse me for a moment." The man with the pinky ring half rose from his seat. "Dom, it can wait." "No," Dominic interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "It can't." His eyes never left mine as he rounded the table. "Thank you, miss." "Diana," I supplied, my mouth dry. "Diana Reeves." "Miss Reeves." He nodded once, then turned to address the others. "Marco, Vincent, order whatever you like. I'll return shortly." The two men exchanged a glance I couldn't decipher. The one called Marco, the heavy-set man with the ring, forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Take your time." Dominic moved past me into the hallway, and I followed, acutely aware of the eyes boring into my back. The moment we were beyond the doorway, out of sight of his dining companions, he grabbed my elbow, not roughly, but with enough firmness to convey urgency, and guided me further down the hall toward a service alcove. "There is no phone call," he stated flatly once we were alone. His hand remained on my arm, warm through the thin fabric of my uniform. Up close, he was even more imposing than I'd realized. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that seemed to compress the air around him. "What are you doing?" I swallowed hard. "They're going to hurt you. The two men sitting on either side of you. Their body language. The way they were positioning themselves. I've studied behavioral analysis. I know what pre-attack posture looks like, and they were about to make a move." His eyes narrowed, searching my face with unsettling intensity. "You're certain?" "Yes." I met his gaze steadily, despite the fear thrumming through my veins. The synchronized movements, the adrenaline response. I'd stake my degree on it. "Your degree," he repeated, something shifting in his expression. Not quite amusement, but close. "You're not just a waitress. I have a doctorate in behavioral psychology," I admitted. "But that doesn't pay student loans or medical bills. So yes, I'm also a waitress." Before he could respond, the sound of rapid footsteps echoed from the main dining area. A large man in a dark suit, definitely security, based on his build and the bulge under his jacket, appeared at the end of the hallway. He spotted Dominic and approached quickly, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "Boss, we've got a problem. Intel just came in. Marco Rossetti and Vincent DeLuca are wired. FBI sting operation." Dominic's jaw tightened imperceptibly, the only outward sign of his reaction. "How long have you known?" "Message came through 2 minutes ago. We were trying to reach you." "Miss Reeves already warned me," Dominic said, glancing at me with what might have been respect. Or calculation. It was hard to tell. "She identified hostile intent before your intel arrived." The security man's gaze shifted to me, assessing. "Impressive." "Get Antonio and Luca," Dominic ordered. "Secure the exits. Nobody leaves until we've searched them." The man nodded and disappeared back toward the main room. Dominic turned to me, his hand still on my elbow. "Miss Reeves, Diana, you just saved me from either arrest or assassination. I'm not entirely sure which. That makes you either very observant or very dangerous." "I'm not dangerous," I protested. though my voice lacked conviction. I just noticed. You noticed something trained federal agents apparently missed, he interrupted. Something my own security didn't catch until it was almost too late. His thumb traced a small circle on the inside of my elbow, a gesture that seemed almost unconscious. That's a valuable skill. I should get back to work, I said, suddenly very aware of how close we were standing, how his cologne, cedar and something darker, was affecting my ability to think clearly. Marco will be looking for me. Marco will be busy explaining why he's trying to hire waitresses who moonlight as federal informants, Dominic said dryly. Then his expression turned serious. You can't go back out there right now. If Rossetti and DeLuca realize you're the reason their operation is falling apart, you become a liability. Fear spiked through me. I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to interfere with anything. I just saw someone about to get hurt and I reacted. I know. His voice softened slightly. But intent doesn't matter to men like Marco Rossetti. What matters is that you cost him either money or freedom, and he doesn't forgive debts like that. The sounds of commotion erupted from the private dining room, raised voices, the crash of furniture, shouts for someone to get down on the ground. My stomach dropped. This was happening. This was really happening. I'd just stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple assault. Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. Antonio has them contained. FBI backup is 3 minutes out. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. Diana, you need to understand something. What you witnessed tonight, what you intervened in, puts you in a very complicated position. There are going to be questions, investigations, and people on both sides of the law who will want to know exactly how much you saw and heard. I didn't see anything, I said quickly. I just served drinks and... You prevented a federal arrest, he corrected, or saved a man's life. Probably both. Either way, you're now part of this whether you want to be or not. The weight of that statement settled over me like a physical thing. I'd spent years studying human behavior from a safe distance, analyzing patterns and predicting actions in controlled environments. I'd never imagined applying that knowledge would have consequences like this. What happens now? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Dominic studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Now, Miss Reeves, you become my responsibility. Whether that's a blessing or a curse remains to be seen. Before I could process that statement, the restaurant's front doors burst open. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded into Luciano's, their weapons drawn and voices commanding. The elegant dining room erupted into chaos. Patrons screaming, staff scattering, the crash of plates and glass as people dove for cover. Dominic pulled me deeper into the service alcove, his body shielding mine as the agents swept through the restaurant. I could see them converging on the private dining room, hear the sharp commands and the metallic click of handcuffs. Through a gap in the curtains, I caught a glimpse of Marco Rossetti being led out in restraints, his face purple with rage. His eyes scanned the restaurant wildly until they landed on me. The hatred in his expression was unmistakable. He knew. Somehow he knew I was the reason his operation had failed. Don't look at him, Dominic commanded softly, his hand moving to the back of my neck in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. Don't give him anything he can use against you later. I tore my gaze away, focusing instead on the Italian marble beneath my feet. My whole body trembled now, the adrenaline finally catching up with me. I'd just made an enemy, possibly several enemies, and I didn't even fully understand why. I need to call my brother, I said suddenly, panic threading through my voice. He's home alone. He has a cognitive disability. He needs someone to check on him. Dominic's hand remained on my neck, steady and warm. Where does he live? Lincoln Park, about 20 minutes from here. He pulled out his phone with his free hand, typing rapidly. Done. I'm sending someone to watch your building. He'll be safe. I blinked up at him. Why would you do that? Because Marco Rossetti is vindictive, and if he can't hurt you directly, he'll go after the people you care about. His gray eyes held mine. And because you saved my life tonight, Diana, that creates a debt, one I intend to repay. The federal agents were beginning to spread through the restaurant now, interviewing staff and patrons. One of them, a woman with short auburn hair and a FBI windbreaker, was heading in our direction. Agent Morrison. Dominic greeted her before she could speak. I believe you're looking for Marco Rossetti. I'm happy to provide a statement. Mr. Caruso. Her tone was professional but cold. We'll need statements from everyone who was in the private dining room tonight. Of course. He gestured to me. This is Diana Reeves, one of the servers. She was bringing water when she noticed something concerning about my guest's behavior and alerted me. I'd only just stepped out when your team arrived. Agent Morrison's sharp eyes assessed me. What exactly did you notice, Miss Reeves? I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. The men seemed tense. Their body language was aggressive. I thought there might be an argument, so I interrupted to give Mr. Caruso a chance to step away. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either, and I could tell from Agent Morrison's expression that she knew it. We'll need you to come to the field office tomorrow to give a formal statement, she said. Both of you. Of course, Dominic agreed smoothly. Diana, why don't you give Agent Morrison your contact information? I need to speak with my legal team. He released me then, stepping away to make a phone call. I provided my details to the agent, acutely aware of how her gaze kept flickering between Dominic and me, as if trying to work out the nature of our relationship. When she finally moved on to interview other staff members, I sagged against the wall, exhaustion and shock catching up with me. The restaurant was still in chaos, guests being escorted out, crime scene technicians arriving, Marco's voice carrying from the private room as he hurled accusations and threats. Dominic returned, tucking his phone back into his jacket. My car is out front. I'm taking you home. I can take the bus. No. His tone left no room for argument. You're not taking public transportation tonight, not after what just happened. I don't even know you, I protested weakly, though part of me recognized the truth in his concerns. For all I know, you're as dangerous as the men who were going to attack you. Something flickered in his expression. Not offense, but something darker. Acknowledgement. I am dangerous, Diana. Make no mistake about that. But not to you. Never to you. The conviction in his voice sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. Before I could respond, one of his security men appeared at his elbow, speaking in rapid Italian. Dominic replied in the same language, his expression hardening. There's been a development, he said to me. Vincent DeLuca escaped during the arrest. He's still out there. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means you're not going home tonight. He took my elbow again, guiding me toward the restaurant's side exit. It means you're coming with me, where my people can keep you safe until this situation is resolved. I can't just leave. My brother is being protected by two of my best men as we speak, Dominic assured me. I'll arrange for a full security detail on your building. But you, Diana, you're staying where I can see you. That sounds a lot like kidnapping, I managed, even as I allowed him to lead me outside. A sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows idled at the curb. Dominic opened the back door, his hand at the small of my back urging me inside. Think of it as protective custody, the difference being that my protection actually works. I slid into the leather seat, my mind reeling. 12 hours ago, my biggest concern had been whether I could afford my brother's new medication. Now I was climbing into a luxury car with a man who was clearly much more than a regular restaurant patron, running from dangerous men and about to go God knew where under circumstances I didn't fully understand. Dominic settled into the seat beside me as the driver pulled away from Luciano's. The restaurant receded in the rear window, its elegant facade now swarming with federal agents and emergency vehicles. My old life, such as it was, disappearing behind us. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dominic turned to look at me, and in the dim light of the passing street lamps, his expression was both protective and possessive. Somewhere safe, somewhere mine. The emphasis on that last word sent another shiver through me. I'd just saved this man's life. And now, it seemed, he was determined to save mine, whether I wanted him to or not. The Mercedes glided through Chicago's nighttime streets, with the smooth silence of wealth and power. I pressed myself against the leather seat, trying to maintain some distance from Dominic's overwhelming presence beside me. The city lights cast shifting shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angle of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes as he typed rapidly on his phone. "My brother," I said again, unable to let it go. "I need to talk to him. He gets confused when his routine changes." "Call him." Dominic handed me his phone without looking up from his own. "The number is secure." I took the device with trembling fingers, noticing the lack of apps, contacts, or any personal information visible on the screen. Just a keypad. I dialed Tommy's number from memory, my heart pounding as it rang once, twice. "Hello?" My brother's voice, uncertain but familiar, flooded me with relief. "Tommy, it's Diana. Are you okay?" "Di, there are men outside. Big men. They said you sent them." His words came faster, anxiety creeping in. "But you didn't tell me about men. You always tell me when someone new is coming." Guilt twisted in my stomach. "I know, buddy. I'm sorry. Something came up at work. An emergency. Those men are there to keep you safe, okay? They're the good guys." "Like superheroes?" Tommy's voice brightened slightly. He was 26, but functioned at about a 12-year-old's level, the result of a car accident that had killed our parents when he was 15. "Exactly like superheroes," I confirmed, fighting back tears. "I won't be home tonight, but I'll call you in the morning. Can you remember the routine for bedtime?" "Teeth, medication, check the locks, set the alarm," he recited dutifully. "Then read for 30 minutes. I'm reading about dinosaurs now. Did you know the Triceratops?" "Tell me tomorrow, okay?" I interrupted gently. "It's late. You should get to sleep." "Okay, Di. The men seem nice. One of them is named Paolo. He said he likes dinosaurs too." I glanced at Dominic, who had paused his own conversation to listen. Something softened in his expression. Not pity, but understanding. He'd deliberately chosen men who would make Tommy feel comfortable. "That's good," I managed. "I love you, Tommy." "Love you too. Don't forget to eat dinner. You forget when you work late." The simple concern in his voice nearly broke me. "I won't forget. Sleep well." I ended the call and handed back the phone. "Thank you for sending someone who would understand. I have a nephew with Down syndrome," Dominic said quietly. "I know how important consistency and the right approach are." He resumed typing, then added, "Your brother will have 24-hour security until this situation is resolved. The team I assigned knows how to be discreet and patient." "How long will that be? This situation?" "Depends on how quickly we find Vincent DeLuca." His jaw tightened. "And on what he decides to do next." The car turned onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north toward the luxury high-rises that overlooked the water. We pulled into an underground garage beneath a gleaming glass tower, passing through multiple security checkpoints. Each gate required biometric scans, each level monitored by cameras that tracked our descent into what felt like a fortress. "Paranoid much?" I couldn't help asking. "Careful," Dominic corrected. "There's a difference." The car stopped in a private bay, and he exited first, coming around to open my door. Welcome to my home. A private elevator whisked us up to the top floor, the entire top floor apparently, which opened directly into a penthouse that made Luciano's look modest by comparison. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city and lake, the lights glittering like scattered diamonds. The interior was all clean lines and expensive materials, marble, dark wood, leather, and steel arranged with masculine precision. Guest suite is this way. Dominic led me down a hallway lined with what I suspected were original artworks. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom larger than my entire apartment. King-sized bed, ensuite bathroom visible through another doorway, sitting area with its own TV and minibar. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit. Toiletries are stocked. If you need anything, use the phone by the bed. It connects directly to the kitchen and security. I stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. This is temporary, right? Just until they catch Vincent? Yes. But something in how he said it made me doubt the simplicity of that answer. Mr. Caruso. Dominic, he interrupted. Given the circumstances, I think we can dispense with formalities. Dominic. His name felt strange on my tongue, too intimate. What exactly do you do? Who are you, really? He studied me for a long moment, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. I'm a businessman. I own restaurants, real estate, import-export operations, all perfectly legitimate. And the not-so-legitimate parts? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I also handle problems that can't be solved through legitimate channels. I provide services, protection, dispute resolution, access to resources for people willing to pay my price. You're in the Mafia. It wasn't a question. That's a simplistic term for a complex reality. He leaned against the doorframe, too close, crowding my space in a way that should have felt threatening, but somehow didn't. My grandfather came to this country with nothing. He built something, a network, a family business that protected our people when the law wouldn't. My father expanded it. I've modernized it, legitimized what I can. But yes, there are aspects of my work that exist in moral gray areas. Gray? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. You were about to be assassinated or arrested tonight. That's not gray. That's felony black. Marco Rossetti was a business partner who got greedy. He thought he could sell information to the FBI and to my competitors simultaneously. Play both sides. Dominic's expression hardened. He was wrong. Men like him don't understand loyalty, don't comprehend that some betrayals carry permanent consequences. What will happen to him? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Prison, if the FBI's case holds. If it doesn't. He shrugged. Justice finds its own path. The casual way he referenced what sounded like murder made my stomach clench. And Vincent? The one who escaped? Vincent is more dangerous because he's desperate. He knows I know about his betrayal. He can't go to the FBI. They'll arrest him on sight. He can't come to me. I'd kill him. Dominic said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing weather. His only play is to eliminate witnesses and go into hiding. Witnesses like me, I realized, ice flooding my veins. Like you, he confirmed. Which is why you're staying here, where I can control every variable, every entrance and exit, every person who gets within 100 yards of you. The full reality of my situation crashed over me. I'd saved a mob boss from assassination, made enemies of dangerous men, and was now essentially imprisoned, however luxurious the prison, in the penthouse of a man who casually discussed murder while looking like he should be on a magazine cover for luxury menswear. I need to sit down, I mumbled, moving to the bed and sinking onto its edge. The mattress was obscenely comfortable, the kind of quality that came from not needing to check price tags. Dominic crossed to the minibar and poured amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. Drink this. I don't. It's brandy. It'll help with the shock. He pressed the glass into my hand. Small sips. I obeyed, the alcohol burning pleasantly down my throat, warming my chest and taking the edge off my spiraling anxiety. Dominic sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me about your degree," he said after a moment. "Behavioral psychology. That's what allowed you to read Marco and Vincent." I nodded, grateful for the distraction of an academic topic. I specialized in nonverbal communication and micro-expressions. The theory is that people can control their words, but their bodies betray their true intentions through involuntary signals. And you can read these signals. Most of the time. It's not mind reading, more like pattern recognition. Specific combinations of facial movements, posture shifts, eye contact patterns. They correlate to emotional states, which suggest likely behaviors. I took another sip of brandy. Tonight, I saw pre-attack positioning. The shoulder tension, the synchronized eye contact, the hand movements toward concealed weapons. Classic indicators. Impressive. There was genuine admiration in his voice. "I employ people to watch for exactly those signs, and they missed what you caught in seconds. Your people were probably watching you, watching the room. I was watching your guests because..." I hesitated. "Because?" he prompted. "Because you interested me," I admitted, the brandy loosening my tongue. "You always did. You'd come into Luciano's, and I'd find myself analyzing your interactions, trying to understand the power dynamics at play. You command attention without demanding it. People defer to you instinctively. It's fascinating from a behavioral standpoint." His eyes darkened with something I couldn't quite identify. "So I was a case study." "Everyone's a case study when you're trained to see patterns." I finished the brandy, setting the glass aside. "But yes, you particularly. You don't fit standard power profiles. You're not aggressive or domineering in obvious ways, but people treat you like you're dangerous. Why?" "Because I am dangerous," he said simply. "I just don't need to advertise it." "The most effective predators don't," I mused, my psychology professor brain overriding my common sense. "They use subtlety, patience, strategic positioning. They make prey come to them. Is that what you think you are?" His voice dropped lower, taking on an edge. "My prey?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "I think I'm a complication you didn't expect. A variable that doesn't fit your usual calculations." "You're right about that." He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we deal with the FBI, with Vincent, with the mess Marco created. Tonight you're safe. That's all that matters." He moved toward the door, but I stopped him with a question. "Why does it matter? Why do you care if I'm safe?" Dominic paused, his hand on the doorframe. "Because you saved my life, Diana. That creates a bond, whether you want it or not. In my world, such debts are sacred." He glanced back at me, and for a moment, his carefully constructed mask slipped, revealing something raw and almost vulnerable. "And because I suspect you're going to be far more important to me than either of us anticipated." Before I could process that statement, he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I sat alone in the lavish guest room, my mind spinning with everything that had happened in the past few hours. My simple life, work, Tommy, bills, routine, had shattered completely. In its place was this: luxury and danger, protection and imprisonment. A man who killed without remorse, but sent kind people to watch my brother. I moved to the window, looking out at the city stretched below. Somewhere out there, Vincent DeLuca was planning his next move. The FBI was building their case. Marco Rossetti was in custody, likely plotting revenge. And I was here, in a tower of glass and steel, under the protection of a man I barely knew, but had somehow bound myself to through one impulsive act of intervention. My phone buzzed. Not Dominic's secure device, but my own, which I'd forgotten was in my apron pocket. A text from an unknown number. I know where your brother lives. Next time my men won't be so friendly. Stay quiet, or Tommy pays the price. The blood drained from my face. I grabbed for the room phone, my hands shaking as I pressed the button Dominic had indicated connected to security. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Someone just threatened Tommy, I said, my voice breaking. A text from an unknown number. I'm on my way. The line went dead. Seconds later, my door burst open. Dominic strode in, no longer the controlled businessman, but something harder, more primal. He held out his hand. Your phone. I gave it to him. He read the message, his jaw clenching. Then he made a call, speaking in rapid Italian. When he finished, his attention returned to me. Vincent, he confirmed. The number's a burner, but we're triangulating his location. In the meantime, I've doubled security on your building. Tommy is safe. How can you know that? I demanded, fear making me angry. How can you possibly guarantee? Because 12 of my best men are now stationed around your apartment, he interrupted. Because I've activated every resource at my disposal. Because I don't make promises I can't keep, Diana. He moved closer, and I found myself backing up until my legs hit the bed. He didn't touch me, but his presence alone was overwhelming. Heat and power, and barely leashed violence all wrapped in expensive tailoring. Vincent made a mistake, he said softly. He threatened what's mine. I'm not yours, I protested weakly. No? He tilted his head, studying me with those penetrating gray eyes. You saved my life. You're under my protection. You're living in my home. In every way that matters legally and morally in my world, Diana Reeves, you are absolutely mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, some traitorous part of my brain, the part that had been alone for too long, that carried too much responsibility, that was so tired of being strong, responded to it. Responded to the promise of someone else taking control, bearing the weight, making the decisions. What happens now? I asked, echoing my earlier question in the car. Dominic's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. Now we find Vincent DeLuca, and we make sure he never threatens anyone I care about again. And then? Then we figure out what to do about this. He gestured between us, acknowledging the tension that had been building since the restaurant. Because you saw something tonight in Marco and Vincent that my trained professionals missed. That kind of skill, that instinct, it's rare, valuable. You want to hire me, I realized. I want to keep you, he corrected. There's a difference. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. They've located Vincent. He's at a warehouse on the south side, one of Marco's old fronts. What are you going to do? What needs to be done? He released me, already moving toward the door. Stay here, don't leave this room. Antonio will be posted outside. Wait. I grabbed his arm. The muscles beneath the expensive fabric were like steel. Don't kill him. Dominic looked down at where my hand clutched his sleeve, then back up to my face. He threatened your brother. Threatened you. In my world, such offenses have only one resolution. In mine, there are other options. Prison, witness protection, something other than execution. I held his gaze, refusing to back down even though every instinct screamed that I was arguing with a predator. Please. Not for him. I don't care about Vincent. But for you. Once you cross that line. I've crossed that line many times, Diana. His voice was gentle but firm. That's who I am, what I do. If you're going to be part of my world, even temporarily, You need to understand that. Then help me understand. Make me understand why violence is the only answer. He stared at me for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. Get dressed. Something dark, practical. You're coming with me. What? You want to understand my world? I'll show you. He was already pulling out his phone, issuing orders in Italian. But Diana, once you see this, you can't unsee it. There's no going back to your safe ignorance. Are you sure that's what you want? I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But staying in this gilded cage, waiting passively while others made decisions about my life, that wasn't acceptable either. Yes, show me. Dominic's smile was dangerous, approving. Get dressed. We leave in 5 minutes. The warehouse district on Chicago's South Side was a graveyard of industrial ambitions. Empty buildings with broken windows, streets cratered with potholes, and the kind of silence that came from total abandonment. Our convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled through the darkness with headlights off, navigating by the glow of a distant street lamp and what looked like practiced familiarity with the terrain. I sat beside Dominic in the middle vehicle, dressed in dark jeans and a black sweater I'd found in the guest room closet. The clothes fit perfectly, which raised questions I didn't have time to process. Antonio drove while another man, introduced only as Luca, occupied the passenger seat. Both were armed, the weight of their shoulder holsters visible beneath their jackets. Second thoughts? Dominic asked quietly as we approached a massive brick structure that loomed against the night sky. Several thousand of them, I admitted, but I meant what I said. I need to understand. What you're about to witness isn't pretty, Diana. Vincent won't go quietly. There will be violence. Will there be killing? I forced myself to ask. That depends on Vincent. Dominic's expression was unreadable in the dim light. If he surrenders, agrees to answer my questions and disappear where I tell him to disappear, he lives. If he fights, if he tries to run, if he gives me any reason to doubt his compliance. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The vehicles stopped a block from the warehouse. Men emerged from the other SUVs, 8 in total, all armed, all moving with the coordinated efficiency of military training. Dominic gave quiet orders in Italian, and they dispersed around the building, taking positions that would cut off any escape routes. You stay with me, Dominic instructed, his hand finding the small of my back. Close. If shooting starts, you get behind me immediately. Understood? I nodded, my mouth too dry for speech. This was insane. I should have stayed in the penthouse, should have let him handle this without me. But I'd demanded to see, and now I was going to see. We approached the warehouse through a side entrance that Luca opened with bolt cutters. The door gave way with a metallic shriek that echoed through the empty space beyond. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of rusted equipment and abandoned crates. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, creating pools of silver illumination amid the darkness. Dominic moved through the space like he owned it, every step confident, every turn calculated. I followed, trying to be as quiet as possible and failing. My breathing seemed impossibly loud, my footsteps clumsy compared to his predatory silence. We found Vincent in what must have once been the foreman's office, a glassed-in space overlooking the warehouse floor. He sat at an old metal desk, a laptop open before him, desperately typing. He looked up as our flashlights found him, his face draining of color. Dom, he said, raising his hand slowly. I can explain. You can explain why you threatened an innocent woman and her disabled brother? Dominic's voice was calm, conversational even. Somehow that was more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. Please, I'm eager to hear this explanation. Vincent's eyes darted to me, recognition flickering. The waitress. You're protecting the waitress. Dr. Reeves. Dominic corrected. Show some respect. She ruined everything. Vincent's composure cracked. Marco and I had a deal with the feds, full immunity in exchange for evidence against you. We would have been free, clear, set up with new identities, one fucking dinner away from escaping your world. And she... He pointed at me accusingly. She noticed something. Warned you. Cost us everything. She saved my life, Dominic replied, which is more than you tried to do when you agreed to testify against me. You're a criminal, Vincent shouted. You've killed people, destroyed lives, built an empire on blood money. Why should I go down protecting you? Because I gave you opportunity when you had nothing, Dominic said, still in that dangerously calm tone. Because I trusted you with my business, my operations, my family. And you repaid that trust by working with the FBI and with my enemies. He moved closer to the glass, and I saw Vincent flinch. Betrayal has consequences, Vincent. You knew that when you made your choice. So what now? Vincent tried for defiance, but his voice shook. You kill me, make me disappear. That's your answer to everything, isn't it? Not everything. Dominic glanced at me. Dr. Reeves here thinks there might be alternative resolutions. She believes in second chances, in rehabilitation over execution. What do you think, Vincent? Do you deserve a second chance? Vincent's gaze shifted to me, desperate hope flickering. Yes. God, yes, I'll disappear. Go somewhere you'll never find me. I won't testify, won't talk to anyone. Please. I felt the weight of both men's attention on me. This was why Dominic had brought me here. Not to witness violence, but to participate in the decision. To understand that mercy wasn't simple, that sometimes the choice between killing and letting live carried its own complications. Can you trust him? I asked Dominic quietly. If you let him go, will he keep his word? No, Dominic answered honestly. Men like Vincent, men who betray once, they betray again. It's pattern behavior. You'd understand that better than most. He was right. I did understand. Vincent's micro-expressions told the story clearly. The darting eyes calculating escape routes. The tension in his shoulders preparing for flight. The rapid breathing indicating adrenaline and desperation, rather than genuine remorse. This wasn't a man seeking redemption. This was a cornered rat looking for any way out. But you wanted to see my world, Dominic continued. Wanted to understand why violence is sometimes necessary. Here's your lesson, Diana. I can let Vincent go, trust his promises, and wait for him to betray me again. Putting you, your brother, and dozens of others at risk. Or I can eliminate the threat permanently. His eyes held mine. What would you do? The question hung in the air between us. I looked at Vincent, really looked at him with all my training and experience. Saw the calculation behind his desperate pleas, the absence of genuine contrition, the likelihood of future betrayal, written in every line of his body language. I'd want to believe people can change, I said slowly. But prediction models based on past behavior are frighteningly accurate. If someone has betrayed trust once, especially when motivated by self-preservation rather than circumstance, the probability of repeat behavior increases exponentially. So? Dominic pressed. I took a shaky breath. So, eliminating the variable that introduces unacceptable risk is statistically rational. It wasn't agreement to murder. Not exactly. But it was acknowledgement that sometimes, in worlds like Dominic's, the mathematics of survival didn't allow for idealistic solutions. Dominic nodded slowly, something like approval in his expression. Then he turned to Vincent. You have one chance. Tell me everything you told the FBI. Every detail about my operations, every name you mentioned, every piece of evidence you provided. Be thorough, be honest, and maybe, you walk out of here. And if I don't, Then Dr. Reeves's statistical analysis proves correct, and we eliminate the unacceptable risk. Dominic's tone left no room for doubt. Choose quickly. What followed was the most surreal hour of my life. Vincent talked, his words recorded by Luca on a device I suspected wasn't standard law enforcement issue. He detailed the FBI's investigation, the evidence Marco had provided, the deals they'd been offered. He named the agents involved, described the surveillance methods, revealed the informants within Dominic's organization. I watched, fascinated despite my horror, as Dominic extracted every piece of information with surgical precision. He never raised his voice, never made explicit threats. He simply asked questions in that calm, measured tone, and Vincent answered, compelled by fear and the slender hope of survival. When it was done, Dominic studied Vincent for a long moment. You understand that if you ever speak of this to anyone, FBI, police, a priest, your own mother, I'll know. And what happens then won't be quick or merciful. Vincent nodded frantically. I understand. I swear, I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. You'll disappear where I tell you to disappear, Dominic corrected. Argentina. I have associates there who will ensure you stay disappeared. You'll work for them. Modest employment that keeps you busy and monitored. Any attempt to leave South America, any contact with American authorities, any deviation from the conditions I set. I understand, Vincent interrupted. Thank you. Thank you for the mercy. Dominic's smile was cold. Don't thank me. Thank Dr. Reeves. She's the reason you're breathing. Vincent's eyes found mine again, and for the first time, I saw genuine emotion. Not gratitude, but resentment. I'd just become the person who'd spared him, which meant I was also the person to blame for his exile. In saving his life, I'd made another enemy. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. I sat frozen, replaying the night's events, trying to reconcile what I'd witnessed with everything I'd believed about justice and morality. Dominic had given me exactly what I'd asked for. A glimpse into his world, an understanding of why he made the choices he made. And I couldn't deny that his logic, within the context of that world, had been sound. You're quiet, Dominic observed as we rode the private elevator up to his penthouse. I'm processing. I leaned against the elevator wall, suddenly exhausted. You were right. I can't unsee what I saw tonight. Regret coming? I considered that. No, I needed to understand. To see that your world operates by different rules than the one I'm used to. I don't know how to reconcile what I know is right with what makes practical sense in your reality. The elevator doors opened to his penthouse. Antonio peeled off to check in with the security team, while Dominic led me toward the guest suite. But instead of leaving me at the door, he followed me inside, closing it behind us. The reconciliation you're looking for doesn't exist, he said. My world and yours, they're not compatible. You operate by academic theories and ethical frameworks. I operate by survival and power dynamics. The fact that you're trying to find common ground shows you don't fully understand yet. Then help me understand. I turned to face him, frustrated by my confusion, by his certainty, by the way he made absolute morality seem naive. You gave Vincent mercy tonight because I asked. That suggests some ethical framework beyond pure pragmatism. I gave Vincent mercy because you wanted to see if mercy was possible, he corrected. It was a lesson, Diana. One that demonstrated why such mercy is often unwise. Vincent will be monitored, controlled, but he'll also resent his exile. Given the opportunity, he'll find ways to hurt me, hurt you. I've bought peace at the cost of future complications. So you should have killed him, I said flatly. Probably. Dominic moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space of the bedroom. But you needed to see the consequences of mercy as much as you needed to see the necessity of violence. Now, You understand both. I sank onto the bed, my legs giving out. This is insane. 2 days ago, I was a waitress with a psychology degree. Now I'm making decisions about whether people live or die. You were never just a waitress with a psychology degree. Dominic sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his heat. You were always more than that. A woman brilliant enough to read micro-expressions other professionals miss, brave enough to intervene when violence threatened, strong enough to demand understanding rather than accept blind protection. The question isn't whether you belong in my world, Diana. The question is whether you're willing to accept that you already do. His words struck something deep inside me, a truth I'd been avoiding. The moment I'd identified Marco and Vincent's intentions, the moment I'd warned Dominic, I'd chosen a side. I'd inserted myself into his reality, bound myself to his fate. Everything since had been consequence cascading from that initial decision. I don't want to belong in a world where violence is the answer, I whispered. But you understand why it sometimes is, he replied. That's the first step. To what? To accepting what you are. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. What we could be together. I looked up at him, at the man who'd gone from stranger to protector to something infinitely more complicated in less than 24 hours. And what's that? Formidable, he answered simply. Your intelligence, your ability to read people combined with my resources and reach, we could be unstoppable. Or we could destroy each other. Also possible. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. But doesn't that make it interesting? Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. The FBI wants us at their office at 8 a.m. for formal statements. About tonight? About Luciano's. He stood, creating distance again. Tomorrow we navigate their questions, their investigation. We play the roles of innocent bystanders caught in Marco's schemes. More lies, I observed. Strategic omissions, he corrected. Welcome to my world, Dr. Reeves, where truth is currency and honesty is a luxury we can't afford. The FBI field office smelled of burnt coffee and institutional disinfectant, a sharp contrast to the leather and sandalwood I'd grown accustomed to in Dominic's penthouse. Agent Morrison led us through a maze of cubicles to a small conference room with a two-way mirror and recording equipment that wasn't bothering to hide its presence. Thank you for coming in, she said, though we all knew it wasn't really optional. Please, have a seat. Dominic had spent the morning preparing me for this, coaching me on what to say, what to omit, how to phrase answers to sound truthful without actually revealing anything meaningful. I'd studied interrogation techniques during my doctorate work, but this was the first time I'd be using that knowledge to deceive rather than detect. Coffee? Agent Morrison offered, gesturing to a pot in the corner that looked like it had been brewing since last Tuesday. No, thank you, I declined. Dominic simply shook his head, settling into his chair with the relaxed confidence of someone who'd done this before. Agent Morrison opened a folder, spreading photos across the table. Marco Rossetti in handcuffs, Vincent's abandoned laptop, the private dining room at Luciano's from multiple angles. Let's start with how you two know each other. Mr. Caruso is a regular at Luciano's, I answered, keeping my tone professional. I've served his table perhaps a dozen times over the past 6 months. And last night? Last night was like any other Tuesday. He arrived with his usual party, ordered his usual bourbon. I was bringing water to the private dining room when I noticed something concerning. Define concerning, Agent Morrison prompted. I chose my words carefully, sticking to the script Dominic and I had rehearsed. The men with Mr. Caruso seemed tense. Their body language was aggressive, shoulders forward, jaw clenched. As someone with a psychology background, I'm trained to notice such things. I thought there might be an argument developing, possibly violence, so I interrupted with an excuse about a phone call to give Mr. Caruso a chance to step away. And that's when we received the tip about Rossetti and DeLuca being wired, Agent Morrison said, not quite making it a question. Interesting timing. Fortunate timing, Dominic interjected smoothly. If Diana hadn't created that interruption, your agents might have arrested me along with Marco and Vincent. I'm grateful for her quick thinking. Yet you left the restaurant with Miss Reeves immediately after the arrests, Agent Morrison noted. Why? Because Vincent escaped, Dominic replied, and because Marco was shouting threats about what he'd do to anyone who'd interfered with his plans. I thought it prudent to ensure Diana's safety until the situation stabilized. Agent Morrison's eyes flickered to me. Did you feel you needed Mr. Caruso's protection, Miss Reeves? Dr. Reeves, I corrected automatically, and yes. Marco looked at me like he wanted me dead. I was terrified. That part at least was true. So you went home with Mr. Caruso, Agent Morrison pressed, to his penthouse apartment, where you spent the night. The implication hung heavy in the air. I felt heat rise to my cheeks but kept my expression neutral. I stayed in his guest suite, under the protection of his security team. Given that Vincent DeLuca was still at large and had made threats. What threats? Agent Morrison pounced on the word. Damn, that hadn't been in the script. Dominic's hand found mine under the table, a warning and a comfort simultaneously. Vincent sent a threatening text to Diana's phone last night. Something about knowing where her brother lives, warning her to stay quiet. I have the message if you'd like to see it. Agent Morrison's expression tightened. Why didn't you report this immediately? Because I was more concerned with ensuring my brother's safety, I said, finding my footing again. Mr. Caruso arranged for security at my apartment. My brother has special needs. He requires consistency and care. I needed to know he was protected before I could think about official reports. Your brother Tommy. I nodded. He has a cognitive disability. He lives with me. Agent Morrison made a note. We'll need to see that threatening message, and we'll want a list of everyone who had access to your phone number. Of course, Dominic agreed smoothly. The interview continued for another hour. Questions about Marco's behavior, about Vincent's role, about what business dealings Dominic had with the two men. Dominic answered with practiced ease, painting himself as a legitimate businessman betrayed by partners who'd gotten involved with federal investigations without his knowledge. One last question, Agent Morrison said as we stood to leave. Dr. Reeves, you have a doctorate in behavioral psychology, specializing in micro-expressions and nonverbal communication, correct? Yes. And in your professional opinion, was Mr. Caruso aware of Rossetti and DeLuca's cooperation with federal authorities before last night? The room went still. This was the trap, the question designed to catch us in a lie. If I said yes, it suggested Dominic knew and had planned some kind of counter-operation. If I said no, it contradicted the obvious sophistication of his response. I met Agent Morrison's gaze directly. In my professional opinion, Mr. Caruso was as surprised as anyone when your agents arrived. His micro-expressions showed genuine shock, pupil dilation, slight jaw drop, momentary freeze response. Those aren't reactions you can fake. It was true. I had seen genuine surprise on Dominic's face. Not at the betrayal, but at the timing of the FBI raid. Agent Morrison studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you both for your cooperation. We'll be in touch if we have additional questions. Outside the field office, Dominic's hand settled at the small of my back as we walked to his waiting car. Well done, he murmured. That was the critical question, and you handled it perfectly. I told the truth, I said. You were surprised. But not for the reasons Agent Morrison thinks. He opened the car door for me. That's the art of deception, Diana. Not lying, but allowing people to draw incorrect conclusions from truthful statements. As we drove back toward his penthouse, my phone buzzed. Tommy's number. Die! His voice was bright with excitement. The men brought breakfast, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Can they stay forever? Relief and guilt warred in my chest. I'm glad you're having fun, buddy. Are they being nice to you? Very nice. Paolo is teaching me about velociraptors. Did you know they were actually small? Movies make them big. I didn't know that. I smiled despite everything. I'll be home soon to check on you, okay? Okay, love you, Di. Love you too. I ended the call to find Dominic watching me. He sounds happy. He is. Your men are good with him. I paused. Thank you for that. I told you. I understand what he needs. His expression softened. My nephew Marco is 12 now. When he was younger, finding people who could communicate with him properly, who wouldn't lose patience with his repetition and literal thinking. It was challenging. Is that why you're doing this? Because of your nephew? I'm doing this because you saved my life, and then dared to demand I spare Vincent's, Dominic replied. Because you're brilliant and brave and completely unprepared for my world, which makes you either very foolish or very dangerous. Which do you think I am? Both. His hand found mine again. Definitely both. The car pulled into his building's underground garage. As we rode the elevator up, Dominic's phone rang. He answered in rapid Italian, his expression darkening with each passing second. When he hung up, he turned to me with grim determination. Vincent never made it to Argentina. My stomach dropped. What happened? Someone intercepted him at O'Hare. My people found his body an hour ago. Dominic's voice was matter of fact, but tension radiated from him. Professional hit. Single shot to the back of the head. But you let him go. You gave him mercy. And someone else decided mercy wasn't warranted, he interrupted. Marco had partners beyond Vincent, people who saw Vincent's survival as a liability. The implications crashed over me. They'll come after me too. Yes. No hesitation, no false comfort. Which is why you're not leaving this building until we identify who ordered the hit. For how long? However long it takes. The elevator doors opened to his penthouse. Welcome to protective custody, Diana. Real protective custody, not the FBI's version. I stepped into what I now recognized as my gilded cage. Beautiful, luxurious, and utterly inescapable. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of luxury and confinement, of learning Dominic's world from the safety of his penthouse fortress. 3 weeks of watching him conduct business from his home office, legitimate deals during the day, shadier operations after dark. 3 weeks of meals together, conversations that ranged from philosophy to psychology to the economics of organized crime. 3 weeks of magnetic tension building between us like a storm waiting to break. Tommy had adjusted to the new routine with surprising ease. Dominic had moved him into a secure apartment in the same building, 3 floors down, with round-the-clock care from people trained to work with cognitive disabilities. My brother was thriving. His dinosaur collection had tripled, and Paolo had become his best friend. D, look. Tommy showed me his latest drawing during my daily visit. A T-Rex labeled Paolo, protecting a smaller dinosaur labeled Tommy from a scary-looking Spinosaurus. Paolo keeps me safe from bad dinosaurs. I hugged him tight, grateful and guilty in equal measure. This was the best care he'd ever received, the most stable his life had been since our parents died. And it was all funded by a man whose business model included violence and coercion. The Rostelli family ordered Vincent's execution, Dominic told me that evening over dinner, homemade linguine prepared by his personal chef. They were Marco's silent partners in the FBI cooperation. When Vincent survived, they saw him as a risk. And now? Now they're concerned about you. He set down his wineglass. They know you identified Marco and Vincent's intentions. They know you convinced me to spare Vincent. They see you as an unpredictable variable. What do they want? To meet you, to assess whether you're a threat. Dominic's expression was carefully neutral. I've arranged a dinner, tomorrow night, here. Fear spiked through me. What if they decide I am a threat? They won't. His certainty was absolute. Because you're going to read them the way you read Marco and Vincent. You're going to tell me everything their body language reveals, their true intentions, their weaknesses, their fears. And then we're going to use that information to negotiate a peace that benefits everyone. I stared at him. You want me to analyze them during dinner? I want you to do what you do naturally. Watch, observe, interpret. He leaned forward. Diana, you have a gift that's worth more than any weapon, any informant. You can see truth when people are lying, spot danger before it manifests, read entire conversations in a glance. That makes you invaluable. Or it makes me a target. Both, he acknowledged, which is why I need you to be brilliant tomorrow night. Show the Rostellis that you're an asset, not a liability. The next evening, I dressed carefully in a navy sheath dress that Dominic had provided. Elegant but professional, conveying intelligence without sexuality, he'd coached me all day on the Rostelli family dynamics. Angelo, the patriarch, ruled through reputation and ruthless pragmatism. His son Dante handled operations, smart but impulsive. His daughter Valentina managed their legitimate businesses, the most dangerous because people underestimated her. They arrived at 8, precisely. Angelo was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, impeccably tailored, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. Dante was younger, handsome in an aggressive way, his expensive suit unable to hide the coiled violence in his posture. But it was Valentina who surprised me. Beautiful in a calculated way, her designer dress and perfect makeup a deliberate distraction from the sharp intelligence in her eyes. Mr. Caruso, Angelo greeted Dominic warmly, kissing both cheeks in the traditional Italian manner. Thank you for hosting us. Angelo, the pleasure is mine. Dominic gestured to me. This is Dr. Diana Reeves, the woman I told you about. Angelo's gaze fixed on me, assessing. The behavioral psychologist. Dominic says you have remarkable observational skills. I'm trained to notice patterns others miss, I replied carefully. Show me. It was a command, not a request. I glanced at Dominic, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Permission. I turned my full attention to Angelo, letting my training take over. You're in pain. Lower back, probably chronic. You favor your right side when you stand. The medication you're taking, strong, likely opioid-based, is affecting your cognition slightly. You're slower to respond than you'd like, which frustrates you because you've built your reputation on mental acuity. Angelo's expression didn't change, but Valentina's eyes widened fractionally. Dante's hand moved toward his jacket. Weapon reach, defensive instinct. You're also worried about succession, I continued, watching Angelo's micro-expressions. Dante is your heir, but you question his judgment. Valentina is more capable, but tradition dictates male leadership. It's creating tension in your organization. The silence that followed was electric. I'd crossed a line, revealed family secrets they'd carefully hidden. Dominic's hand found the small of my back, steady pressure. Trust me, it said. Then Angelo laughed. Dominic, you weren't exaggerating. She's extraordinary. The tension broke. Dante relaxed marginally. Valentina smiled, genuine amusement lighting her face. We moved to the dining room, where dinner became a strange kind of performance. I watched, analyzed, occasionally shared observations that demonstrated my value without threatening their dignity. Dante, you disagree with your father about something recent, I mentioned during the main course. Your jaw clenches when he discusses expansion strategy. You think it's too aggressive, too visible. Dante stared at me, then nodded slowly. The harbor development. It's attracting too much federal attention. He's not wrong, Angelo admitted, but opportunity requires risk. Calculated risk versus reckless ambition, I observed. The distinction matters. By dessert, the Rostellis were treating me less like a curiosity and more like a consultant. They asked questions. Could I predict prosecutor behavior, read jury responses, identify undercover agents? My answers were theoretical, academic, but they understood the practical applications. You should work for us, Valentina said as coffee was served. That mind, those skills, they'd be invaluable. She works for me, Dominic replied, his tone allowing no argument. A waste, Angelo countered. One family cannot monopolize such talent. Perhaps a partnership, Valentina suggested, her sharp mind already calculating. Dr. Reeves consults for both organizations. Shared resource, shared benefit. I looked at Dominic, uncertain. He'd prepared me for many scenarios, but not this. The decision is Diana's, he said, surprising everyone. She's not property to be negotiated over. All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I understood the choice I was really making. Accept their offer, and I'd become fully integrated into this world, no longer a protected civilian but an active participant. Refuse, and I'd remain dependent on Dominic's protection, indefinitely trapped in this gilded cage. I'll consult, I heard myself say, but on my terms. I don't participate in violence. I don't enable harm to innocents. I provide analysis, nothing more. Angelo studied me. Fair terms. Agreed. Just like that, my fate was sealed. I was no longer Diana Reeves, waitress with a psychology degree. I was Dr. Reeves, consultant to Chicago's criminal elite. The absurdity of it should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else. Purpose. After the Rostellis left, Dominic pulled me into his arms. You were magnificent. I just sold my soul, I murmured against his chest. No. You just found your true calling. He tilted my face up to his. You're meant for this, Diana. Not the waitressing, not the academic obscurity. This. Using your brilliance to navigate power, to predict chaos, to shape outcomes. By helping criminals. By helping people survive. His thumb traced my cheekbone. That's what this world is. Survival. You understand that now. I did. Somewhere over the past weeks, my moral absolutes had developed nuance. I'd seen Dominic's people. The families they protected, the communities they supported, the justice they provided when legal systems failed. It wasn't black and white. It was every shade of gray. What happens now? I asked. Now you become invaluable. He kissed me then. Finally, after weeks of tension and proximity, and carefully maintained distance. The kiss was consuming, possessive, a claiming that went beyond physical desire to something deeper and more dangerous. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes held a promise and a warning. You're mine now, Diana, completely. And the terrifying truth was, I wanted to be. 6 months later, I stood in Dominic's office, our office now, analyzing surveillance footage of a federal prosecutor's deposition. My ability to read micro-expressions had become legendary in Chicago's underworld. Cases were won or lost based on my assessments of witness credibility. Negotiations succeeded because I could predict when the other side was bluffing. Tommy thrived in his new life. Paolo had become like family, and my brother's world had expanded beyond anything I'd imagined possible. He volunteered at a dinosaur exhibit now, his specialized knowledge finally valued instead of dismissed. The prosecutor is lying, I told Dominic, freezing the footage on a telltale flash of fear in the man's eyes. He knows the evidence is fabricated, but he's proceeding anyway. Someone's pressuring him. Who? Dante Rostelli's rival faction. They're using federal authorities to eliminate competition. I pulled up additional files. Look at the pattern. 3 cases in 2 months, all targeting Dante's operations, all based on questionable evidence. Dominic's hand settled on my shoulder. What's your recommendation? Expose it. Not through violence, through the system. Anonymous tip to the Justice Department's internal affairs. Let them investigate their own corruption. And if that doesn't work? Then we use what we know about the prosecutor's offshore accounts. I met his gaze. But we try the legitimate route first. He smiled, proud, approving. You've learned to balance both worlds. I had. The past months had taught me that Dominic's empire operated on information as much as intimidation. My skills made me his most valuable asset. And somehow we'd built something that felt like partnership. There's something else, I said, my hand moving to my stomach. Something we need to discuss. Dominic went very still. Diana? I'm pregnant. The words were both terrifying and exhilarating. 8 weeks. For a moment he just stared. Then he pulled me into his arms, his face buried in my hair. A baby. Our baby. Is this... I couldn't finish the question. Everything, he said fiercely. This is everything. That night, we made plans. Not for a normal life. That ship had sailed, but for our life. Dominic would continue legitimizing his operations, creating a world our child could inherit without shame. I would keep consulting but focus on advisory work, staying away from immediate danger. Marry me, Dominic said as we lay tangled together afterward. Make this real. Make us a family. I thought about everything I'd become, everything I'd accepted. The violence I'd witnessed, the compromises I'd made, the lines I'd crossed. I thought about Tommy, safe and happy. About the baby growing inside me. About the man who'd seen my potential and helped me claim it, even in his dark world. Yes, I whispered. 2 years later, I adjusted the twins in their double stroller, Dominic Jr. and Sophia, 18 months old, and already showing signs of their father's stubborn determination and my analytical mind. Tommy walked beside me through Millennium Park, Paulo as always at his side, both men serving as protectors and companions. The Caruso Empire had transformed under our partnership. Dominic handled operations. I handled intelligence. Together, we'd built something more sophisticated than Chicago had seen. Criminal elements balanced by legitimate businesses. Violence replaced by strategic pressure. Territory gained through negotiation rather than bloodshed. The Rostellis remained allies. Valentina and I had become genuine friends, her business acumen complementing my psychological expertise. Angelo had retired, leaving Dante in charge but with Valentina as equal partner. My observations about their complementary skills had convinced the old man to break with tradition. Dr. Caruso, a young woman approached hesitantly. I recognized her from one of our legitimate businesses, a community center Dominic funded. I wanted to thank you. My brother got the scholarship you recommended him for. He starts college next month. That's wonderful, I said warmly. Tell him to stop by the center if he needs anything. This was our empire now. Power used for protection. Influence leveraged for opportunity. We weren't saints. Dominic still made decisions that kept me awake at night. But we were building something better than what had existed before. Happy? Dominic asked that evening as we put the twins to bed. I looked at our children, at the home we'd created, at the life we'd built from chaos and choice. Complicated, I answered honestly. But yes, happy. He pulled me close. I love you, Dr. Caruso. I love you too. I kissed him, tasting our future, uncertain, dangerous, but ours. Look at me now, I whispered, echoing the thought I'd had that first night. Look at what we've become. Magnificent, he replied. Absolutely magnificent. And despite everything, I believed him. 3 years later. The federal courthouse steps were cold beneath my Louboutin, a gift from Dominic for our 3rd anniversary, bought with money I no longer questioned the source of. Agent Morrison stood at the top of those steps, her expression a mixture of determination and something that looked almost like pity. Dr. Caruso, she called down to me. We need to talk. Alone. I glanced back at the black SUV where Dominic waited, his silhouette visible through the tinted windows. Paolo stood with Tommy near the fountain, my brother laughing at something about Pachycephalosaurus headbutting. The twins were home with their nanny, safe, innocent, unaware that their mother was about to make a choice that would define the rest of our lives. 5 minutes, I agreed, climbing the steps. Morrison led me inside to a small conference room. She spread photographs across the table, surveillance images of Dominic meeting with known criminals, financial records showing money laundering, transcripts of wiretapped conversations. And there, in the center of it all, my own image, entering the Rostelli compound, analyzing interrogation footage, consulting on territorial disputes. 3 years of evidence, Morrison said quietly. Enough to bring down the entire Caruso organization. Dominic, Angelo Rostelli, Valentina, Dante, everyone, including you. My hands trembled as I looked at the documentation of everything I'd become. What do you want? Testimony. Full cooperation. You wear a wire. You document everything. You help us build an airtight case. She paused. In exchange, immunity for you and your brother, witness protection, a chance to start over somewhere safe, somewhere clean. And my children? They stay with you. They grow up away from this world, away from violence and corruption. Morrison's voice softened. Diana, I've watched you for 3 years. I know you're not like them. You're a psychologist who got caught in circumstances beyond your control. You can still get out. Could I? I thought about the past 3 years, the power I'd wielded, the decisions I'd influenced, the lives I'd shaped through my analyses. I'd convinced myself it was for good, that I was making the best of impossible situations. But looking at these photographs, I saw the truth. I'd become exactly what I'd once feared, an active participant, a willing collaborator. How long do I have to decide? I whispered. 48 hours. After that, we move forward with or without you. Morrison stood. Think about your children, Diana. Think about what kind of world you want them to inherit. I walked back to the SUV in a daze. Dominic opened the door himself, his eyes immediately catching the distress I couldn't hide. What happened? He demanded as we drove away. Morrison, she has everything. 3 years of evidence. I couldn't look at him. She wants me to testify, offered immunity and witness protection. The car went silent. Even Paolo, driving, tensed visibly. What did you tell her? Dominic's voice was carefully controlled, the tone that preceded either violence or absolute calculation. That I needed time to think. To think. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. After everything we've built, everything we've become together, you need to think about betraying me? Not betraying. Saving. I finally met his eyes. Dominic, our children are growing up surrounded by armed guards and bulletproof glass. Sophia asked me yesterday why we can't go to the park without Paolo and 6 other men. She's 3 years old, and she already knows she's different, already senses the danger. They're safe, protected. They're prisoners! The words exploded from me. Just like I was when you first brought me to your penthouse. Beautiful, luxurious prisoners in a gilded cage. Is that what you want for them? For DJ to learn his father's business? For Sophia to marry into another crime family? Dominic's jaw clenched. I'm legitimizing everything. In 10 years. In 10 years, there will be new enemies, new threats, new reasons why we can't live normal lives. I felt tears streaming down my face. I love you. God help me, I love you so much. But I'm drowning in this world, and I'm taking our children down with me. We arrived at the penthouse in crushing silence. Dominic dismissed Paolo and the security team, leaving us alone in the living room where 3 years ago he'd first explained what protective custody really meant. You saved my life that night at Luciano's, he said quietly. Do you remember what I told you? That it created a bond, a debt that would never be fully repaid. I remember. I've spent 3 years trying to repay it, protecting you, elevating you, giving you purpose and power. I've shared everything with you, my empire, my secrets, my heart. He moved closer, his hands framing my face with devastating gentleness. But I realize now that I've been paying the wrong debt. You didn't just save my life, Diana. You showed me what life could be, what love could be, what family could mean beyond duty and bloodlines. Dominic, let me finish. His thumb wiped away my tears. I've built this empire on fear and control. I've convinced myself it was necessary, that the ends justified the means. But looking at our children, seeing the fear in Sophia's eyes when she asks about the guards, I understand what I'm really building. Not a legacy, a prison. For them, for you, for myself. He stepped back, his expression resolute. Go with Morrison. Take the deal. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. What? Testify. Bring down my organization, the Rostellis, all of it. His voice was steady, final. Give our children the life they deserve. You'd go to prison, for decades, maybe life. I know. A ghost of his old smile touched his lips. But our children would be free. You'd be free. That's worth any price. I can't, Dominic. I can't do that to you. Yes, you can. He pulled me into his arms one last time. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Strong enough to survive my world. Strong enough to save me from it. Strong enough to walk away. We stood there, holding each other, as the sun set over Chicago. The city we'd ruled together, the empire we'd built, the life we were about to destroy. I love you, I whispered against his chest, memorizing his heartbeat, his scent, the solid strength of him. I love you more than I knew I could love anything, he replied. Which is why I'm letting you go. The beach house in Oregon was small compared to the penthouse. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a porch overlooking the Pacific. But it was ours. Really ours. Bought with legitimately earned money from my consulting practice helping law enforcement agencies develop behavioral analysis protocols. Mama, look. Sophia ran toward me, her dark curls, so like her father's, flying behind her. I found a sand dollar. It's beautiful, baby. I knelt to examine her treasure, DJ immediately joining us with his own collection of shells. Can we call Daddy tonight? DJ asked, his gray eyes, also inherited from Dominic, full of hope. Tomorrow, I reminded him gently. Wednesday is our call day, remember? The trial had lasted 8 months. My testimony, combined with the evidence Morrison had gathered, had brought down the entire organization. Dominic was serving 20 years in a federal facility. Angelo Rostelli had died of a heart attack during the trial. Dante and Valentina had taken plea deals, 10 years each, but Dominic had orchestrated something extraordinary from inside. Before his sentencing, he'd restructured everything, transferred all legitimate assets into trusts for the children, ensured Tommy's lifelong care was funded, even arranged for Paolo to relocate near us as our family friend and protector. He'd turned his empire into something that could survive his absence, something that wouldn't drag his children down with him. The burner phone in my pocket buzzed. Our private line, untraceable, forbidden, but necessary. I waited until the twins were distracted building sandcastles before answering. "Hello, stranger." Dominic's voice was rough, deeper than I remembered. "How are you?" I asked, as I did every Wednesday. 18 months down, 18.5 years to go. He laughed softly. "But who's counting? Your lawyer says there's a chance for early parole. In 10 years, maybe. If I behave." A pause. "How are my babies?" I looked at the twins, healthy and sun-bronzed, laughing without fear, without armed guards, without bulletproof glass between them and normal childhood. "They're perfect. Free. Happy. Good." The satisfaction in his voice was absolute. "That's all that matters." "Not all," I whispered. "You matter. We miss you. I miss you." "I know. But Diana, listen to me. Don't wait for me. 10 years is too long. If you meet someone who can give you the life you deserve, stop. I couldn't bear it. There's no one else. There will never be anyone else." "Then I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Sorry that loving me cost you so much. It also gave me everything." I watched the sun set over the ocean, remembering another sunset in a penthouse that no longer existed. "You gave me purpose, power, children, love. You sacrificed your freedom so we could have ours. How could I regret that?" "You were supposed to have both," he said. "Freedom and love, not be forced to choose." "But I did choose. I chose our children's future, and I'd choose it again." I paused. "But Dominic, when you get out, whenever that is, we'll be waiting. This family will be waiting." His breath caught. "That's a long time to wait. Good thing I'm patient." I smiled through tears. "Besides, someone once told me that debts are sacred, that bonds created through salvation can never be broken. I saved your life once. You saved mine and our children's. I'd say we're even, but I think we're really just. Bound. Forever." "Forever," he echoed. I liked the sound of that. After we said goodbye, I sat on the beach watching my children play, Tommy and Paolo building an elaborate dinosaur habitat nearby. This was catharsis, not the happy ending I'd imagined that night at Luciano's, but perhaps the honest one, the earned one. I'd entered Dominic's world to save him from assassination. In the end, I'd saved him from himself, from the empire that would have eventually destroyed us all. And he'd saved me from the comfortable lie that I could participate in darkness without losing the light. DJ ran up with another shell. "Is Daddy proud of us, Mama?" I pulled him close, breathing in his little boy scent of sunshine and salt water. "He's so proud. More than you'll ever know. Will we really see him someday?" I looked out at the endless ocean, thought about the years stretching ahead, the impossibility and inevitability of waiting, of loving, of hope. "Yes, baby. Someday we'll all be together, a real family." "We're already a real family," Sophia insisted, joining our embrace. "Daddy said so. He said family is the people you love, even when they're far away." Out of the mouths of children. I held my babies close and let myself believe it, that love could survive prison walls and impossible distances, that sacrifice could transform darkness into light, that the man who'd once terrified me with his power had shown the greatest strength by giving it all up. "Look at us now," I whispered to the sunset, to the man hundreds of miles away behind bars, to the life we'd chosen over empire. "Look at what we've become. free, scarred, hopeful, waiting, and somehow, against all odds, still magnificently, impossibly, completely in love.